Hi, Jen, we're up in, 8 minutes. Can we get your camera on just to have a look and double check? That would be wonderful, please. Lovely, thank you. I'm going to turn this mic off so you won't hear me again. We've got a few minutes, like I said, 8 minutes. So I just wanted to make sure you were there and everything was fine.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've called this press conference this afternoon for one simple reason. Because the threat to family finances from this chaotic Conservative campaign is now so severe, it must be exposed and must stop. In the first week of this campaign alone, the Conservatives have promised £71 billion of unfunded spending commitments. Now, if this was just politics, we could pity the Conservatives for their poor campaign. But as voters across the country know, there is a direct connection between the chaos of Conservative unfunded policies and family finances. This is not ancient history or theory from a textbook. This is what we all went through as a country less than 2 years ago, with Liz Truss's kamikaze budget now being followed by Rishi Sunak's kamikaze manifesto. The Conservatives simply have not learnt the lesson, and they're doing it all over again. Their behaviour is economy-crashing, family finance-destroying madness, and it cannot continue. The Conservatives have been told this over and over again, not just by Labour, but by independent experts. And they've even been warned by themselves. In December last year, the Conservatives published a Treasury analysis on the impact of borrowing on interest rates. Now, using this Treasury document, we in the Labour Party can estimate today that a 2% of GDP spike in borrowing to fund their unfunded policies could increase interest rates by around 2.5 percentage points. That means the consequences of Conservative unfunded party policies, by their own analysis, could put family finances at risk once again with an interest rise of up to 2.5 percentage points. Today, I'm going to talk you through exactly what the Conservatives are doing and exactly how dangerous this is for families and businesses across the country. To start, some of the Conservative costings are, quite frankly, nonsense. Some of them are spending the same pot of money twice, and some of them are simply refusing to say how they would pay for them at all. The public, voters, deserve to know the truth. Because when the exit poll lands at 10 p.m. on Thursday, the 4th of July, yes, the first thing that people will look to is the number of seats each party is predicted to have won. But the next thing will be the financial markets. Because if the Conservatives carry on down this path with unsustainable, unfunded promises, it could cause a loss in market confidence once again, leading to increases in interest rates. It will mean our economy sliding back into recession and ordinary people around the country paying the price with their jobs and their mortgage bills all over again. This could not be more serious. The truth is simple. Britain cannot afford 5 more years of chaos from the Conservatives. And my message is simple. This reckless Tory spending must now stop. Thank you. I'm now going to take questions from journalists, and I'm going to start with Jessica Parker from BBC. Hi.
You're talking about...
Oh, yeah, wait for the mic. Yeah.
Jess Parker, BBC. You're talking about what impact you think Conservative policies may have in the future. I'm interested in getting your reaction to the actual meat of some of the policies they've been announcing, whether that's on pensions or apprenticeships today.
Well, as the IFS has already said about their apprenticeship policy today, it's unfunded. And that's the whole point of this press conference. All of their policies so far have been unfunded. That's £71 billion of unfunded spending commitments. And as we've been saying today, using their own analysis, if that's going to be paid for by additional borrowing, that will have an effect on the debt that the country's in, the way the economy grows, and as a consequence, the Bank of England could decide to increase interest rates as they did do previously. That's why we're calling it out, because voters deserve to know what the consequences will be of 5 more years of the Conservatives in government, and they must answer these questions.
But sorry, do you think these policies are a good idea?
Well, they're not funded, so it's a non-starter. I mean, the Conservatives have to say, if they're going to announce any policy, how they're going to pay for it. That's what we deliver in the Labour Party, fully funded, fully costed policies, and that's what we expect from the Conservatives. Okay, we're going to go to Sam Coates next at Sky. Sam.
Sam Coates, Sky News. Darren Jones, Jess Phillips told us that she wants Diane Abbott to stand and become a Labour MP in the next Parliament. Do you? And a different question about Labour's economic plans. Yesterday, Rachel Reeves told me that she rules out increasing income tax, national insurance and corporation tax for the duration of the next Parliament. But everything else falls into the meaningless bucket of no plans. So I just want to check that that's right, so that you are not ruling out increasing VAT, increasing business rates, increasing capital gains tax, and all the other things. All of those things are potentially on the table if there's a black hole, for instance, left behind by the opposition, by the Tory government, and only those three taxes are the ones that you rule out increasing in any way.
Thank you, Sam. So Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, was very clear yesterday that all of our policies are fully funded and fully costed. And the way we've raised money to pay for those policies, those first 6 steps that an incoming Labour government will implement, is through the closure to the loopholes that we've set out. So private school VAT, private equity bonus tax, closing the non-dom loopholes, the energy profits levy on windfall from the oil and gas industry, and investing to tackle tax avoidance in the system. None of our policies require any further funding, and that's why there is a commitment to not raising taxes in the manifesto in this election, because all of our policies are fully funded and fully costed. On your first question
I didn't understand. You said there is a commitment to not raising tax, so there will be no other tax rises at all other than those in the whole Parliament for any. So why is she ruled out completely three tax rates rising?
Well, so we don't need to raise taxes any further to pay for our policies. They're fully funded and fully costed. In terms of some of the taxes you've referred to, we've been very clear for some time that we want the tax burden to come down on working people. It's the highest it's been for 70 years, and that's why we're making those commitments. But all of our policies are fully funded and fully costed without having to raise taxes any further. To answer your first question on Diane Abbott, Diane has had the whip restored. She's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party again, and if she wants to talk to the Labour Party about standing at the next election, I'm sure that conversation will be taking place. Thank you. Neil MacDonald, please, Channel 4 News.
Thank you. Just on your projection of 71 billion of borrowing, you seem to be assuming that they're going to scrap national insurance entirely from year one, but in your own document you point out that they've said that they're not planning to do that, that it is an ambition to be achieved over the lifetime of this Parliament, possibly the next as well. So if we work on that assumption, these figures don't add up, do they?
No. So the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has been very clear. I was in the House of Commons, I think, for the last set of Treasury questions, when the Chancellor confirmed that it is Conservative Party policy to abolish national insurance altogether. That's why we've included the cost of that in our policy costings today. If the Conservatives think they're going to pay for that differently or do it in a different way, they need to set out the answers to that detail.
Altogether, but not over the lifetime, not the first year.
That's a question for the Conservative Party to answer. All they've told us is they want to scrap national insurance altogether. That will cost £46 billion a year, and they need to answer the question as to how they're going to fund that. Ryan from The Sun.
Thank you. Traditionally, the Conservatives are seen as the most trusted on the economy, but do you see this just as a Project Fear way of scaring people to vote Labour? How do you see this? And is it just a Project Scare tactic?
No, the first thing I'd point to is the fact that based on polling, the Labour Party is the most trusted party on the economy, and Rachel Reeves is the most trusted to be the most effective Chancellor of the Exchequer at this point in time. This is a change Labour Party. As you've seen from Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday, economic stability is the heart of our offer to the country because stability is change. This document today is merely presenting Conservative Party policy as has been announced in the first week and highlights the fact that it's entirely unfunded. And because people have suffered the cost of unfunded commitments from the Conservatives before, voters will be worried about that, and that's why we say the Conservatives either need to say how they're going to fund those policies so that voters at home know, or stop this reckless behaviour in announcing unfunded policies as we go further into subsequent weeks of the election campaign. Thank you. Ashley from The Mirror.
Hi, junior doctors have announced a new round of strikes today. Would Labour meet their ask for 35% pay rise?
Sorry, just the second half of the question.
Would they meet their ask of a 35% pay claim?
Well, look, it looks like the Conservatives have given up trying to negotiate with doctors about their pay settlement. We would rather that had been dealt with a long time ago, and now we're back to square one during the election period. That's a huge shame. It's the job of Conservative ministers to have resolved this issue in the interests of NHS and patients across the country, and they have failed. So look, if we win the election on July the 4th, we're going to have to pick this up, but you can know for sure that a Labour Party will roll up its sleeves, get around the table and get the job done. Thank you. Amy from The Telegraph.
Thank you. Hi, Amy Gibbons from The Telegraph. Can I just ask you very simply, would you describe yourself as a socialist, as Keir Starmer has done?
I would describe myself as Labour. I don't really get into this business of sub-factional definitions. I'm a member and a very proud member of the Labour Party. I'm a proud trade unionist, and I'm very happy to go to the country on that basis at this election. Thank you so much. Hugo from The Eye.
Thank you. Can I ask about Labour's own fiscal policy? You've pledged to bring back the lifetime allowance cap on the amount that can be saved into pensions tax-free if you win the election. But you've said you'll provide some sort of workaround to ensure that you don't drive NHS staff out of the workforce. We've been told by some senior NHS workers that unless they get more detail urgently on how this will work, they'll be looking to retire or sort of wind down their hours to avoid massive tax bills. When will they get clarity on exactly how this mechanism will work?
In a couple of weeks when we publish the manifesto. Thank you. Eleni from The Guardian, please.
Thanks. Darren Jones, following on from Sam Coates' question from Sky. So you've ruled out raising any existing taxes to pay for Labour's policies in the manifesto. Will you rule out any new taxes to pay for policies?
Yeah, I think this is, not to put words in your mouth, often a question about whether we'd create a new kind of wealth tax. Rachel Reeves has been very clear that we're not doing that. There are no plans to do that whatsoever. The only tax changes that we're setting out at this election are the tax loophole changes that we have already set out on private schools, on private equity, on non-DOMs, and on the energy profits levy on the oil and gas industry, as well as a little one on stamp duty for overseas buyers to fully fund and fully cost all of our policies. Thank you. Claire from the Daily Mail, please.
Hi, thank you. When you were chair of the business committee, you were quite outspoken about Royal Mail's failings. Would you support the takeover that's going through at the moment, and would Labour move to block it if they get into government?
Well, look, this is a piece of new news today. There'll be lots of detail to be considered, and it will require government to authorise that takeover. And so if we win the election on July the 4th, that'll be an issue for Jonathan Reynolds, our shadow business secretary, and he'll have to consider the detail in due course. Thank you. Joe from Bloomberg, please.
Thanks, Darren. Is your party being honest with the country about the fragility of the state of public finances and how Britain's debt position is increasingly seen as unsustainable? Every serious economist says that the next government would have to enact a period of significant spending restraints, tax rises as well, to fund public services. And aren't you setting up the electorate for a feeling of betrayal, effectively, when if you do win power, you would have to do that?
No, we're being very honest with the public. I was on national television only last night saying that the fiscal inheritance that we would receive if we win the election on July the 4th is the worst any party will have received since the Second World War. I mean, you have to stop and pause to think about that for a second. Since the Second World War, that's how bad it is. But that's why we've set out an initial injection of money into our frontline public services, because we know there's an immediate need for that, not least our commitments today on 40,000 additional appointments in the NHS each week going into that winter period, which we know is always a struggle for the National Health Service. But then we're going to have to do the hard yards in turning the country around, and that's not going to be easy because of the damage and chaos from the Conservatives over the last 14 years. The route to sustainable public finances is by getting the economy back on track and growth back into the economy, and that is our absolute focus in the Labour Party. Thank you. Fraser, LBC, please.
Thank you. You called this emergency press conference just as so many people are talking about Diane Abbott. Is this simply you trying to reclaim the narrative? And just on unions, if I can as well, you've got some unions demanding that Diane Abbott is allowed to stand. You've got junior doctors announcing strike action on the day you're focusing on the NHS. And you've got others who aren't happy with what they see as the watering down of your workers' reforms and hitting out at your list of business backers. Have you lost the support of some unions?
No, and this is not in response to topical news. We were working on this yesterday. I'm very pleased to present it to you this afternoon. Look, our work on employees and workers' rights is a really important part of our offer at this election. we're going to have a set of initiatives which we call Making Work Pay, which we will set out in our manifesto in due course, where people who are on kind of unsecure working terms and conditions, are on low incomes or in vulnerable working situations, will receive additional support under a future Labour government. We think that's important for workers and workers' rights, but it's also really important for the economy and will mean that our labour market participation is enhanced in order to drive growth in the economy. Thank you. David, The Independent, please.
Darren, you'll appreciate that the Conservatives have made their own accusation about black hole in your spending plans of 38.5 billion. But just looking at a couple of issues, one raised by my colleague earlier, have you set aside any money to resolve the doctors' strike, given that this is an ongoing problem and you will have to pick it up if you win power? Do you have any idea how much it would cost, how much you would offer them? And have you factored in any spending from your private school tax rate on pupils having to switch to the state sector, which could, in some estimates, cost up to 4.2 billion, well above the amount of money you hope to gain from adding VAT to fees?
Great. Those are three questions, but I'll take them in turn. The first, in terms of the Conservative Party assessments of Labour Party policy, they were wholly inaccurate. They were not reflective of Labour Party policy, and I'd be very happy to come back and compare Conservative dossiers to the work that we've done, because our work represents what the Conservative Party has said about their policies. Conservative attacks on our policy are not reflective at all of what our Labour policy is. That's why their dossiers are not accurate. On doctors, as I've said before, look, we wanted the government to settle this. They should have settled this before the election. They haven't. So if we win the election on July the 4th, we will have to pick that up and we will get the job done. And then lastly, on private school fees, I'd point you to the Institute for Fiscal Studies assessment of our policy, which factors in a bit of behavioural change, but still concludes that it would raise significant amounts of money, as we've set out, in order to provide 6,500 additional specialist teachers in state schools across the country. Thank you. Martin from The Express, please.
Thank you. Keir Starmer has refused to back the triple lock plus announced by the Tories this week. Does that mean then, under Labour, the less well-off pensioners will be poorer? And also, this document today mentions the word assume and assumptions at least 27 times, by my calculations. That's a lot of assumptions, isn't it? Can the British public be trusted? Can the British public trust your analysis?
That was very quick reading, Martin. Very good. Look, the number of assumptions are there because the Conservative Party's got questions to answer. If they want to set out the detail and confirm how they're going to fund these policies, I will happily consider them. But right now, they've not done so. All they've said is they've set out these headline policies without any financing or funding behind it. That, as I've set out today, is a reckless approach to running the country, and they should answer those questions. And if they do so, I'll happily come back and consider them in detail. There was a second part to your question. Triple lock. This is one of the unfunded policy commitments. So the Conservative Party has made this commitment, but they've not said how they're going to fund it. In fact, the money they've identified for this has been spent twice between the National Citizenship Survey, the kind of, what did you call it, Teenage Dad's Army policy from the Conservative Party, and then again on pensioner commitments. I would say to pensioners listening at home, do you trust the Conservatives? Because they're the ones that broke the triple lock. They're the ones that have increased the thresholds. They're the ones that have put pensioners at risk of paying tax once again. Do you really believe them with an unfunded commitment that they're going to give you a few hundred extra quid back a year? I don't. James from Politico, please.
Good afternoon. Senior Conservative ministers have been publicly critical of the FCA.
Do you want to try again? I don't think it's personal. I think the battery ran out. There you go. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Try again.
Oh no, that's still not working. Is he allowed to shout? Yeah, please shout.
Cool. Senior Conservative ministers have been critical of the FCA over the past couple of years, especially over the past couple of months, over its decision making. Will Labor Treasury work with the FCA to mend that relationship, or will it interfere if it disagrees with its decision making?
Yeah, look, there's been a little bit of cross-party consensus on this issue, actually, where we want to make sure that our regulators are geared towards driving investment and growth in the economy. And that means that our regulators, which rightly are independent and led by experts, have to operate within that what's called a strategic steer from government about their policy outcomes. And there have been some concerns about some of the policies they've announced in the past. And both on the Labour and the Conservative side, there's been a consensus that we maybe need to work to update the strategic steers for those regulators to get them into the right place. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.